Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Juan Banda. Dr. Juan Banda is currently an assistant professor of computer science at Georgia State University. Prior to that, he was a research scientist in the lab of Nigam Shah at the Stanford Center for Biomedical Informatics. His research involves developing machine learning techniques for analyzing observational data from electronic health records to identify patients with underdiagnosed latent conditions, as well as for clinical trial recruitment. He's a developer of APHRODITE and an active member of the NLP and Phenotype Gold Standard Working Group.
Okay, so hi. So I'm going to talk about fair phenotyping definitions with APHRODITE. So just for some of you that don't know what APHRODITE is, it's a OHDSI R package where you can do heuristic phenotype definitions. So just FYI on that. And in terms of this, why do we need fair phenotype definitions? Well, as Andrew Williams said this, very nicely put this, there's a common failure of, reproducibility of results. This is what we've seen in a lot of the talks today as well, right? That we can't reproduce something. It's very hard to do it, even having as much as information available. So, we need to address that. And at least for phenotyping, we think that, I think the solution is, trying to follow this fair guiding principles for scientific data management and stewardship. So this came up, a couple of years ago. I'm pretty sure almost every single person in this room has heard of this. So we're just, these principles have been rapidly being adopted. The European Commission, it's applying them for, a lot of their mission statements. The NIH is also adopting them. There's Go-Fair organizations. There's countless, places that are adapting at least, these principles to make their data easily available or more easily available and for reproducibility purposes. So what does it mean to be fair? So this is a question that a lot of people ask, and it's kind of, difficult to see. So fair, the F stands for Findable. It's basically here where, you want the data and the supplementary materials to have sufficiently rich metadata and unique and persistent identifiers. So you need to be able to point at it in a very standard way. Accessible in the sense that, you want metadata and data to be understandable to humans and machines. So if you notice, a lot of journals are, asking you to fill this more accessible or at least little configuration files where you put metadata. So this is part of that. Interoperable in the sense that, the metadata uses a format that is accessible, shared, and broadly applicable. So you can actually represent it easily and nicely. And it's reusable in the sense that, data and collection have clear usage licenses and, provide accurate information on provenance. So those are two very important things. Obviously, it doesn't mean that they need to be free. That's one of the biggest misconceptions. You can still use the license that you want. So what are we proposing here? So for how would a APHRODITE fair phenotype definition look? So APHRODITE definitions, phenotype definitions are basically a binary machine learning model with a bunch of extra, settings and configuration files where you can use to run your site. So what we're adding to this is that, we're proposing that, this definition to be findable, we need to have an address of a persistent global unique resource identifier, or URI, for each phenotype definition version. So that's not very hard, and we can even use, a GitHub commit or something like that. As a plug, the OHDSI Gold Standard Phenotype Library, and the work group is working on, having a place to put them. So it's linked to that. And if you're interested in where this is going to go, you should go and see Aaron's demo, by the way, which is, it's an abstraction layer on top of, wherever you're storing your phenotype definitions. Phenotype definition will be accessible in the sense that, the definition, the generation script, all the metadata should be retrievable by their identifier using any regular web browser or the phenotype library. And by using, publicly and freely available resources like GitHub or Google Drive, whatever, you can offer this accessibility a lot easier than having them stored in some server and just some random files there. The definition, should be interoperable in the sense that, we'll leverage the CDM and all the vocabularies to solve the obstacle of, interoperability across sites. That's one of the biggest key issues when you're phenotyping algorithms that don't port anywhere. And our definitions will use JSON for knowledge representation and machine readability, so that way you have a standard identifiers and standard fields that you can just read anywhere. So the APHRODITE definitions work with the phenotype gold standard library, for example. It will be reusable. So in this sense, all the definitions are easily shareable and reusable for other sites. We have all the metadata elements necessary in the software. So we have CDM version, vocabulary versions, and all attributes that guarantee reusability. So we have, when you have licenses, you also have publications associated to it, so you can put the DOI numbers on them, and site and researcher information. So if you're interested in having a bigger picture of all these little fields that we're putting in the definitions, you can see the poster where I actually have the list of all of them. And and just an overall, improving the quality and the fairness of digital resources will improve their quality and potential of resource. Reuse. Sorry, I think that that's very important, and that's what a lot of us are about. Having people not reinvent the wheel and use things that you already came up, people validated. That's also a lot of the background of why we need a gold standard phenotype library. And again, this is, there's some set of rules that we came up with based on the basic FAIR definitions, but if you have any input or you want to provide any new things that we haven't thought about, you just reach out and we'll consider adding them to our definitions. Thank you.